Hi class, Mrs. Calvi here. I'm just going to do a quick review on converting fractions to decimals. I just want to go over some of the most common fractions that typically you already know what the decimal equivalent is. So let's start with, all right, so 1/2 is one that is pretty typical. So we should know that 1/2 is equivalent to 0.5. All right. Now, what does 1/2 really mean? It means we're taking 1, we're dividing it by 2, right? So 1 divided by 2 gives us 0.5. Again, a typical fraction that we know the decimal equivalent to. Another one that we've talked about in class before is 3/4. 3/4 is one of those fractions that we should know the decimal equivalent to is 0.75. All right, so 3/4 is equal to 0.75. Another one that we typically know. So another one we've talked about in class is 1/3. And 1/3 is equivalent to 0.3, and it actually repeats. So that 3 keeps on going. So 1/3 is equal to 0.33333 ongoing. All right, so those are the ones we've typically talked about in class. Now let's look at one that we don't happen to know the decimal equivalent to and go ahead and actually do the division for it. So if I had, let's say I had 4/5. So I don't know the decimal equivalent. Let's just say you don't know it offhand. You would take your 4 divided by 5. Remember, your numerator always goes inside of your division box. So 5 does not go into 4. It goes in 0 times. I need to add a decimal and a 0. Remember, in class, I always tell you, bring up your decimal right away into your quotient, because if you don't do it right away, typically you're going to forget to put it in your answer. So now I'm looking at 5 going into 40. Well, 5 goes into 40 exactly 8 times. 8 times 5 is 40. So 4/5 is equivalent to 0.8. All right, let's try another one. All right, so let's say we had 3/5 and we want to know the decimal equivalent. So we are going to take our numerator divided by our denominator. Remember, numerator always goes inside the box. Well, 5 goes into 3 0 times. I need to add a decimal, add a 0, bring my decimal right up. So now 5 goes into 30. Just so happens it goes in exactly 6 times. So 6 times 5 is 30. And I know that 3/5 is equivalent to 0.6. Okay, we'll try one more. Okay, so let's say I had 7/8. So I'm going to take 7 divided by 8. 8 goes into 7 0 times. I'm going to add my decimal and my 0, bring up my decimal right away. So 8 goes into 70 how many times without going over? Well, I know 8 times 8 is 64, and 8 times 9 is 72. So 9 is too much. It's going to go in 8 times. At 64, I'm going to subtract. Now, rule of thumb in class, I always tell you go out at least 2 decimal places, okay? So I'm going to add another 0, bring it down. 8 goes into 60 7 times. 7 times 8 is 56. I'm going to be left with 4. Now, I went out 2 decimal places, but I happen to know, because I know my facts, if I add another 0 and bring it down, I know that 8 will go into 40 evenly. So 8 goes into 40 exactly 5 times, and then I would come down to 0 over here if I were to subtract. So then I decided to go out 3 decimal places because I know that it would be a terminating decimal. Remember, a terminating decimal is a decimal that stops or comes to an end. Okay, so 7/8 is equivalent to 0.875. So in order to convert a fraction to a decimal, all you're doing is dividing. Okay, so for today's assignment, make sure you have to actually show the division for your work. Okay, I will talk to you soon.